Anita. It is a wonderful and precious chance for me to be the master of ceremony on this beautiful day on Tuesday, 23 of June, 2020. And in our international webinar, tips and tricks improving academic performance and clinical skill for student and midwifery during COVID-19 pandemic. First of all, let's say thanks to Allah who has been giving us guidance, happiness, health, and mercy so we can attend and participate in this event without any obstacles. Praises and salutation upon our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the last messenger, the best figure on this universe, the person who has able to save us from Jahiliyah era. In this beautiful moment, I would like to say welcome to Mrs. Ida Farida, SKPMkes, the head of YATSI Nursing and Midwifery College, all of lecture, guests, and of course, all of my beloved friends. On this special day, we have several agenda, so allow me to read the sequence of the agenda. The first is the opening, the second is national anthem, the third is greeting, the fourth is the presentation of the speaker, the fifth is question and answer session, the sixth is the closing and prayer. Well, to take advantage of the time, let's start this agenda by reciting Basmalah together.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Step on the following. Agenda is singing national anthem, Indonesia Raya and God Defend New Zealand. The next agenda is greeting, and now I would like to invite Mr. Iksan. To Mr. Iksan, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mugi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone in Indonesia, and good afternoon, Auckland, New Zealand. I hope we're always in a good condition during this pandemic. Okay. My name is Iksan. As the fourth vice chairman, I'm representing the chairman of YATSI Nursing and Midwifery College, Ms. Ida Farida. Would like to welcome you all in the international webinar of YATSI Nursing and Midwifery College with the title Tips and Tricks Improving Academic Performance and Clinical Skill for Student and Midwifery During COVID-19 Pandemic. Firstly, we would like to thank you, Ms. Ida Farida SKPMKes for facilitating this webinar. Secondly, thank you very much to the speakers, Ms. Judith McCarr-Cooper as the Associate Professor in Auckland University of Technology. Are you here, Ms. Judith? Okay, hi, Ms. Judith. Okay, next one is Ms. Andrea Gilkison as the Senior Lecturer Midwifery in Auckland University of Technology. And Ms. Lasri Mewinarni as the Lecturer Midwifery of YATSI. Also, thank you to Ms. Retno Purwani as our moderator. Thank you to accepting to speak at this webinar. Your expertise is a great value to all of us. The global survey in the end of the May showed that New Zealand have an index score of 56, is the best performing Western country for COVID-19 response. We are fortunate for having Ms. Judith and Ms. Andrea here. Next, thank you for the committee from Midwifery team of YATSI and YATSI third year student for organizing and hosting this webinar. Also, last but not least, thank you for all the participants of this webinar from all over the city in Indonesia and some from overseas. Last night, I was told there were 878 participants registered. It shows a good enthusiasm. So hopefully in this webinar, we can get more information to improve our skill, enrich our knowledge, also keep adding value for all of us during this pandemic. Hopefully this webinar will run well until the end. However, I would like to apologize in advance if in this process of this webinar still having some technical issues. I think that is all from me. Please enjoy this webinar and thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Back to you, Ms. Mugi. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Mr. Iksan for the greeting. Let's keep on to the main agenda that is present by our special speakers, Mrs. Judith McCarr-Cooper and Mrs. Andrea Gilkison. The first, I will invite Mrs. Retno to be the moderator. To Mrs. Retno, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Chunda Has, for giving me the time. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yeah, good morning, everyone. How are you? Yeah, I hope you are always in a good condition, stay safe, and a good motivation to study. Yeah, I'm here as a moderator. We'll guide the walking session in this time. Thank you for the opportunity to meet the wonderful speakers today from New Zealand and from Indonesia. Okay, first of all, I will read the CV of the first speaker. She is Miss Judith McCarr-Cooper. Okay, She is Miss Judith Mikara Cooper. She is an associate professor in Auckland University of Technology in New Zealand. Her qualification are PhD, PG Diploma in Education, BA, Diploma in Midwifery, Register General and Obstetric Nurse. Her teaching areas are critical hermeneutic, critical theory, qualitative research, midwifery, research methods, MAH, thesis supervisor and examiner, PhD, thesis supervisor and examiner. And her research area are midwifery, workforce, sustainability, place of birth, maternal mental health, and critical qualitative research. And for today, we are going to discuss for the first material entitled How to Improve Midwifery Student Achievement on Skills During COVID-19 Pandemic, which will be delivered by Ms. Judith Mikara Cooper. To those appreciate Ms. Judith Mikara Cooper, we invite you, please come in.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for your invitation for us to speak to you. We are very happy to be able to come into this webinar and to share with you our learnings during this time of the COVID pandemic. And we also hope that we will be able to have some discussions and some questions and some learnings for us from you as well. I'd like to share my screen, if that's possible. Yes, it is. Good, thank you. Just 1 minute while I bring up the slideshow part of it. Mouse, that would be helpful. Sorry, I'm having a technological moment. Where is it? Okay, so sorry. Completely lost my mouse. Must be on one of the other screens, but low, sorry. There it is. Just come back, I think. Yeah, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, got it. Here we go.
We can see.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to introduce to you a little our university and who we are in Auckland University of Technology, and greetings from New Zealand to all of you. And of course, here we are all the way down here, a long, long way away from Indonesia.
Yes.
We run a Bachelor of Health Science Midwifery. So these are some of our wonderful students that we have in our Bachelor of Health Science Midwifery. This is an undergraduate degree. We also have published on our model of education in New Zealand. If you are interested, you will find this in a journal called Midwifery. We also run postgraduate, master's and doctoral programs. Here are some of our lovely graduates. And here's our latest doctoral graduate, Corinne, who is actually from Indonesia. She just passed her PhD just last week. So we're very proud to have her as one of our graduates. Oh, some more. And we also have a Centre for Midwifery and Women's Health Research that is part of the Midwifery School and part of our university. So we would now like to, I'd now actually like, if it's possible, rather than for me to go on with talking at this point, I'd like my colleague Andrea, Dr. Andrea, to come in, because we wanted to begin our presentation by talking a little bit about midwifery in New Zealand, just so you understand our context. So I'm just going to get my colleague Andrea to come forward now, and she will talk a little bit about midwifery in New Zealand. The international stuff. That's on the next. All right. Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so greetings everybody. It's really lovely to be here talking with you today. Very warm greetings from us, all of us here, the midwives, the teachers, the students from AUT. Are very happy to be talking with you today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oops, how do I?
Sorry. Here we go, Andrea. There we go. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
So Judith and I and some of the other midwifery team have also we also do quite a bit of international work, and this picture here is with some of the midwifery educators who we're working with in Bangladesh.
It might be better to use that. Oh, yeah.
And again, that's in the Pacific.
It's the right-hand corner there.
Right-hand corner.
No, this one, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry. To do that one.
Yeah, we'll get it. There we go.
We'll get there. Yeah. Again, that's Bangladesh.
Yep. That one left-hand, sorry. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry, that was just showing you some of the international work that we do with in the Pacific and Indonesia and Bangladesh as well. So just to before we talk about the how the midwifery school has adapted during the COVID pandemic and with our teaching, I thought I'd just outline very briefly about the model of midwifery care that we have in New Zealand. So in New Zealand, midwives have the authority to lead maternity care for women. We can take full responsibility for women throughout pregnancy, labour, birth, and after the birth. So about half our midwives in New Zealand work as self-employed midwives called lead maternity carers, or LMC. And lead maternity carer midwives in New Zealand work in the community. They have clinics in the community, or visit women in their own homes. And the other half of the midwives' work are employed by hospitals or small birthing units or big hospitals, and they tend to work rostered shifts. So as I've said, those LMC community midwives are community-based, self-employed, provide care from early in the pregnancy to 6 weeks after the birth of the baby. The scope of our practice includes ordering all the screening tests like blood tests, scans, and prescribing as well, so that we are able to care for women throughout the whole experience. Midwives are paid by the Ministry of Health, so that we're paid by the government according to for the woman who we care for. And we have access to local maternity facilities such as hospitals and clinics to take women, can go and provide labour care for women in the place where she chooses to give birth, as well as home birth or wherever the woman chooses to have the birth. And 95% of women in New Zealand have their own midwife. So in New Zealand, when the global pandemic reached New Zealand in February, we had our first cases. New Zealand instigated an alert level system, and so which ranged from level 1, which is the least restrictions, to level 4, which is the highest level. So on March the 23rd, we moved to a level 3 restriction. And so at that point, educational facilities closed, big gatherings were cancelled, any any groups of more than, all the public facilities such as libraries, cinemas, shopping malls, etc. They were closed. But then in response to increasing cases, we moved to, 2 days later, we moved to a level 4, which is known as, we came to call this lockdown. Everybody stayed at home unless you were an essential worker. Educational facilities completely closed. We were teaching online. Students couldn't go to clinical. There were restrictions on women. Women were encouraged to have their babies at home instead of the hospital if they felt safer there. They also limited the number of people who could go with them, and when they had their babies, they could have one person with them. Midwives were faced with using personal protective equipment, PPE. So it was a very, and you'll see in our other slides that people were encouraged to stay in their bubble, stay at home with just their immediate family who they were stayed with for that entire time that we were in level 4. Then as the cases were about a month later, we were able to drop back to level 3 because we were managing the cases. There were, I think at that stage, we got down to no new cases. And then again, we were able to drop down to, yeah. And then on May the 13th back down to level 2. And at that stage, we could then start to go out. The shops were opening, the schools were opening again. There was, a lot more freedom. We could meet in groups of, was it 10? 10, I think, at that stage. At that stage, you could have a gathering of 10 people. And then just recently on June the 8th, we've been able to go back to level 1, right down to level 1, because we had no new cases for 2 weeks, I think it was, or even longer, 3 weeks. Unfortunately, we now do have some more cases because people who have travelled from other countries have come. They're in isolation. But so these are the range of measures which have been instigated in New Zealand, and I'm sure you have you'll be very familiar with that. So this has been huge adjustment for midwives and midwifery students and for all of us really. And I'm just going to share some stories from some of our midwives about how they provided midwifery during the pandemic. And as I've said, our midwives work out in the community. So this midwife, so everyone's at home in their bubbles, and the woman can't go to the midwife's clinic, and the midwife shouldn't really go into their home unless she absolutely has to. And so this midwife set up drive-in clinics for women in the driveway of her house. So her usual clinic had been closed, and she was worried about traveling widely into other parts of Auckland or into their homes, or Wellington, sorry, she was in. And she said women were afraid to break out of their bubbles. So they would drive into her driveway at her house and have their partners there would be with them in the cars. And that she said her driveway is bordered by trees, and so it was private. And so she could lean in through the car window and do the abdominal palpation with the woman in the car. And then she could do the blood pressure also through the window. And she said she'd listen to the baby's heartbeat and measure the fundal height as well. And for the urine test, she'd give them a stick to take home and then ask them to photograph it and send them back. So, midwives were very, very creative at how they could still provide care for women. And this midwife is talking about the biggest challenge for her was her fear of spreading COVID to mothers, babies, and their families, or bringing it home to her own family after she'd been visiting multiple bubbles. So in other words, going into multiple homes. So she used texts, messages, calls, emails, and video calls to talk to women during the lockdown. And she also talked to women about how she was working between different bubbles, and that if it was up to them if they wanted a face-to-face visit. And she did say, however, all her postnatal women still wanted them to visit face-to-face, come into their homes. And this is another midwife who talks about the challenges in the postnatal period. Because everyone was in their bubbles, they couldn't have the usual support. You couldn't have the grandparents or mothers who weren't a part of that bubble coming in to help them. Often it was just their husband or partner. And so some of those women experienced, real hardships as, of being a mother and in isolation. And this midwife got a lot more calls about help with breastfeeding, expressing milk, avoiding mastitis, reassurance about feeding, and for women who had had a cesarean section, checking on the wound. And she said one of her clients, one of her women who had had a cesarean section, went home within 24 hours after the surgery to get the support, because she wasn't getting the help in the hospital, and that was one of the impacts of COVID. So that's just to set the scene really about what midwifery is like in New Zealand. And now I'm going to hand on to Judith, who is going to talk about how some of the tips and tricks for teaching during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you, Andrea. And thank you for this topic of tips and tricks for improving our performance and clinical skills for students during the pandemic. It really made us think about what we had done during this time. I think, though, that it's hard to talk about improving. I think for us, we just wanted to ensure that students continued to have the environment in which they could learn, and that they could continue to perform academically. So that's really what I've built my presentation around. So there are three things that we learned during the COVID-19 pandemic, which are really our tricks and tips that I want to share with you. And one of those was connection. The other one was kindness. And the other one was celebration. And kindness was something that in our country, our Prime Minister talked a lot about kindness during COVID, that we needed to be kind to one another. So these are the three things: connection, kindness, and celebration that we focused on during our COVID pandemic, to help students and staff continue to teach and to learn as in the most optimal way that they could. So as Andrea's always said, the situation for us was from March the 26th to 23rd of April, we're in level 4, which meant no students on campus. None of us were allowed to leave our home. We all had to stay in our home, in our bubble, unless we're essential workers. And for our students, that meant no clinical placements, no classroom teaching. And there'll be no classroom teaching at my university at AUT until the 20th of July, and which is still a long way away. And our students did not go back into clinical until all of our students till May the 18th. So we were in the middle of semester 1, a really important teaching and learning time, and we had to stop everything. And so we thought your question was very well made. How do we ensure our students' learning and achievement during a time of a pandemic? So one of the things I want to talk about is a celebration. During our lockdown, where we could not leave our homes, where we could not go to university or into clinical placement, it was International Midwives Day on the 5th of May. And so we brought our whole school together on Zoom. So New Zealand is a very small country. We only have 5 million people, not like Indonesia. And so when I say our whole school, it was about 200 or so of us. came together on Zoom and we celebrated International Midwives Day. And there are a couple of videos, and I will play one at the end. I think I'll leave it till the end now. But what the students did was they put together something that spoke to them of what midwifery was. And during a time of lockdown and during a time of feeling stressed and anxious, coming together to celebrate was such an important thing to do. So this is one of our tips around how to cope during the pandemic. Remember to come together to celebrate events. And we also a staff member left us during that time and went back to work in the hospital, and we came together and we were in our own homes, but we had cake and we had coffee and we had all those things we would normally do together. So how does celebration improve academic performance, or how does celebration ensure academic performance? It gives strength to students and staff. It reminds us why we are studying to be midwives. It reminds us during a time of stress and anxiety that there is hope and that together we can achieve our goals. It gives support to people that are really struggling with mental health issues. In New Zealand, I'm sure in Indonesia, many people have lost their jobs. Many people are struggling financially. Many people are struggling with anxiety and stress. Coming together and celebrating makes sure that we're supporting each other. It refreshes and refuels the heart and the spirit. And when we feel a purpose and we feel supported, then we can study, then we can learn, then we can teach well. So it's really important that we still come together as we can, even when we are meant to stay in our homes and we can't leave our homes. The other tip and trick I would give you is connection. So we did the following to connect. All our learning, teaching, and assessments went online. And this was not easy. This was not done overnight. And we were very lucky to have a platform called Blackboard, which we could use to put all our teaching up. The students could access that. But we had to put everything up online so the students could access it. So, but not only to do that, it was important that as we did that, we also met with them via Zoom. So in our midwifery school, every year has these wonderful students who represent the students, and they are the connection between the teachers and the students. And we're lucky to have two of them here who are going to talk to you a little bit later as students. And so every week as associate professor, as head of the department, I would meet with the student representatives and we would talk about the student issues, the student concerns. We would hear what was going on for the students and we would respond if we could to make things easier for the students, to make sure that they had what they needed to do to learn, to make sure we were not putting too many burdens on them and making it too hard for them. We also, as myself, associate professor and head of department, my program leaders and the paper leaders, we did a weekly Zoom live session with all our students. That was fascinating, having hundreds of students on there and doing questions and answers. But again, it's about connection. If our students hadn't felt connected, if they hadn't felt that we were there supporting them, I'm not sure what their results would have been like in semester one. But because they knew we were there, we were listening, we were interested in their learning, then I think I know they continued to learn and they've achieved well. So this is the platform we have called Blackboard, which is an online platform. And here's, you can see an example of all the modules that are up there, and underneath the modules are a thing called discussion board, where students could ask questions and we could answer them. So all the time, connection, 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 connection. Now, you may not have something like Blackboard, I don't know. You may not have the facility for something like this. But as Andrea said earlier, she and I do quite a lot of work in Bangladesh. And during this time, we have been working with Bangladesh and supporting them in their remote learning. And so we have used with Bangladesh Google Docs. We have got up on Google Docs all the lesson plans, all the resources. Andrea and I have been spending our evenings writing what we call assignments for the students, and the students do these assignments after every lesson, and that involves making notes, quizzes, and group work. Now, they do this on their smartphone. It just blows my mind that we have students in Bangladesh doing this work. As you can see, this was a pharmacology lecture, and they're doing this on their smartphone, and we're using Google Docs. So one of the other tips and tricks is that connection doesn't need to involve a huge platform. It can involve something that's readily accessible, Google Docs, a smartphone, and you do need some sort of decent Wi-Fi. That is true. The other very important thing, which is what we're doing now, is Zoom. And we'd used Zoom for about maybe 3 years. We'd used Zoom 3 years before COVID. But we learned new things about Zoom. We learned that we could put the students into breakout rooms. And so rather than having 200 or 150 students in a class, we could put them into 10 breakout rooms and have 5 students in each class. And we could and the chat function on Zoom became very, very important. And the feedback from the students around learning like this was actually really positive. Some students really loved it. So for some students, this really enhanced their learning online. The trick, of course, is not to have them online for hours and hours. So to break it up and to have learning activities. So again, connection and things like Zoom can be very, very effective during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, I think I talked about that. I think I'll move on from that. This is just another, what I was saying before was that we had these weekly Zoom sessions with the students. And so this was about connection and kindness, remembering always to give students a voice and to hear what was really, really concerning them. So for us, connection and kindness were 2 of our biggest tips and tricks that we would share with you at this point. The other thing that we did was send really encouraging messages to students, recognizing this was a really difficult time for them and their families. And so these are 2 messages I sent, and you may not be able to read them or see them, but one of them says, I was telling all the students they needed to take some time off studying and they needed to have some downtime. And I said, it's time to rest, to breathe, recover, to heal, and we will do the same. COVID pandemic is an incredibly stressful time for individuals and for families. It's really important that we encourage each other and we give each other permission to take the time we need to deal with that stress and anxiety. Because students can't learn when they're stressed, they're anxious about their grandmother, their mother, their brother, their sister. They can't learn during that time. They need time to be with their family and also time to work through the demands on them, as most of our students, like your students, I imagine, are women. so they have families that they're responsible for. So very important as the head of a department to actually be the one putting out kind messages. And I know you're very good at this in Indonesia. Your kind messages, the lovely way you interact with each other. So I'm sure you've been doing that for each other during this time. So how does connection then actually support or improve academic performance? So when students are supported in their learning and they have a learning plan and support through contact and are given the resources they need, then they will still continue to learn, COVID or no COVID. When we know what the students' concerns and issues are, when we know what's working for them or not working for them, and we can respond to that, then I know that they will be learning. When we can respond and change so they have the best opportunity to learn during lockdown, when the students have a voice, and that we know that it's really important as teachers, we don't put unrealistic expectations on students during something like a COVID-19 pandemic. So the students need to have a voice and a safe place to tell us what they need for their learning. And there are a number of other things there that we will share these slides with you that you can look at about how important connection is to support academic performance. So kindness, very important in our country during COVID. Our Prime Minister told us we had to be kind to one another. So we've all been taking it very seriously. But for us, as a midwifery faculty, we gathered weekly via Zoom for coffee, and often we just shared how our families were, how we were coping, how they were coping. And this provided us with support, friendship, collegiality. And in that way, we then could be really good teachers for our students. We could ensure we had the energy to actually give the best that we could for our students during a very stressful COVID-19 time. So I just put this together about how do I think kindness really supported our academic performance. I think it meant that people knew they were supported. We became aware of what was going on in each other's lives and the students, and so we could ease the burden for them. It meant the students were safe to speak, and it meant we could take the pressure off sometimes so that the anxiety didn't get too much during the pandemic, a very stressful time. So how do I know that connection, kindness, and what was the other called? Connection, our three things, connection, kindness, and celebration have really made a difference. Because we've just finished semester one. So we've just finished the semester when the students have not been able to be on campus and a lot of the time could not go on clinical placement. So at this moment, all our results are in for our theory papers, and we've got excellent results. There have not, from what we can see, been any significant impact for COVID on our students' results. So that means we got something right. There have been a lot of requests for extensions, more time to do the work, and we've worked hard to make sure the students have what they need so they can get the work in on time. So sometimes when students are struggling, our students can get a 5-day extension to put an assignment in. So there've been a lot of students getting extensions, but most of them have managed to get it in. There are a small number of students, I think 2 or 3 out of about 300 students who are not going to continue studying into next semester because of COVID, and mainly the financial implications it's had on their families. So that was my first part of my presentation. And the second part, because you gave us a very big mandate, and as I just want to speak quickly to that, was how do we as teachers ensure that our students maintain their clinical skills during a COVID-19 pandemic? So these were some thoughts we had. So remember, in New Zealand, at level 4, we're all at home. We're not allowed to go out. Our students aren't allowed to go into clinical. So we thought it's really hard to develop skills, midwifery skills, when students can't even be in the laboratory and the simulation rooms. How does midwifery students learn clinical skills when they're not in clinical practice? How do you develop skills when students can't use their hands and they can't be hands-on doing things? Because that's what midwives do, don't they? They do a lot of things with their hands. And then our next big challenge was, are skills learned in the laboratory, the simulation room, the practice room, are those as good as the skills learned in clinical? And I'm sure for those of you that are faculty listening to this, you have been having the same thoughts and quandaries that we had. How do we ensure? Because when we started, we didn't know we're going to be in lockdown for 6 months. And how would we ensure during that time that our students still got their clinical skills? So there are 2 scenarios we had, and I imagine things are similar for you. So the worst scenario was students cannot go to the school of midwifery, and they don't have access to lab or simulation, and they cannot go into clinical. And the next one was they can go to the school of midwifery and access laboratory and simulation, but they can't go into clinical practice. So how do you manage those 2 scenarios when it comes to clinical skills? And so the first one we did, and I don't expect you to read this, but it's something that you can read later when we give you the slides, is that one of the first things we did, one of our lecturers set up a information sharing by AUT 3rd year midwifery students. So they would ring the woman on the phone and they would do all the pre-information giving to the woman that the midwife would normally do. So they would talk to the woman about healthy eating, exercise, weight gain, smoking, immunizations, and then the postnatal stuff of breastfeeding. And this was all done on the phone. And the students had a template which they filled out. And this template had 20 items on it, and student had to make big notes around it. And then they had to give it to the midwife, and they had to give it to their midwifery teacher, and it was all checked through. And then we got feedback from the woman that she was happy with the information. Now, this was a clinical practice experience. It was a fabulous practice experience, all done on the phone by the student. Usually it was up to an hour and a half. So, you know, the students couldn't go out on practice, but they could still have clinical practice experience. So this was one of the ways we did it. It was very, very successful. And we'll probably carry on doing this now because it was so successful for the woman, the midwife, and the student. The other thing we did was when students couldn't go out onto clinical practice, we got them to do some of the online learning packages that we have. And I don't know whether you have access to some of this, but some of our students had their suturing kits at home, and so they could work through, say, suturing programs, so they could be practicing their knots and all those other special things that go with suturing. So while, again, they weren't doing clinical, they could be practicing at home some of the clinical skills. And the other thing that midwifery didn't do this, but some of the other health professionals did this. We have a thing called Healthline, which during the COVID pandemic was very, very busy when anyone in New Zealand who was worried whether they had COVID, whether they knew someone who had it, they could ring the Healthline. And some of our health students, not midwives, but some of the nurses, the OTs and others, they went and worked on Healthline 8 hours a day. Doing this and got clinical hours. So they were in their own home with the phone, advising people through Healthline. So again, they couldn't leave their home. They couldn't go to clinical practice, but there were other ways of doing it. And some people did virtual clinics where during this time, I actually pulled a muscle in my back, and I had a virtual clinic with a physiotherapist who actually cured my muscle that was pulled. So we're doing a lot of this in New Zealand now without leaving the building or even leaving your home, actually being able to do clinics in this way. And so again, the other thing we did was we looked to have really innovative and creative solutions, which nearly killed me. But in New Zealand, students are not essential health workers. So once we went into lockdown, students could not go into hospitals. So I worked with the midwifery leaders and we came up with a whole new position called Healthcare Assistant Final Year Midwifery Student. This was just for COVID. And so they were employed by the hospitals, paid by the hospitals, supervised by midwives, and they worked as healthcare assistants and final year midwifery students. So this was something new for our country. We'd never done this before. But we were very worried about our health workforce, very worried about it getting overwhelmed, very worried about midwives getting very stressed and not having enough support during this time. So this was seen as a way of supporting them. Because we weren't in lockdown as long as we hoped, well, as long as we thought, not hope, we only got 4 students into these positions. But this was an innovative, creative way where students couldn't get into clinical practice to get some students into clinical practice, to keep them safe, because the students were employed by the hospitals. And this is some feedback from the students about these new positions which we put in place just for COVID. This role was amazing. It was a great opportunity to make close relationships with staff and gain more confidence with my learning and skills. If everyone could have this chance, I'd highly recommend it. This role is great. Been getting really good experience, really happy with it. The staff also really love this experience as students as part of the team. So this is something, again, that we've learned from COVID that we give to you as one of our tips that we're actually going to try and now carry on and integrate into our midwifery program. It was so successful. So this is when students can have access to labs, but they still can't go into practice. So we've been able to bring our students into our labs and sims and run scenarios, do skills and drills, do Oscars, do all sorts of things, actually bring them into the university and do that rather than going into clinical. So that's worked really well. And don't expect you to read all this now either, but our midwifery workforce after COVID is very, very stressed. So we're not going to send our first year students out into practice this year. We're going to do everything in simulation. So all these skills, hand washing, sepsis, CPR, documentation, booking visit, we're actually going to be doing in simulation practice rooms here at the university. And they're going to have 16 days of simulation rather than going on practice. And we know from the research of simulation or practice that those students will be really well prepared when they go into practice. So there's no reason, if you can't put your students into clinical practice, that especially for first years and maybe even for second years, that you couldn't just be doing simulation with them. A lot of the research that's been done in this area, believe it or not, shows that simulation is as effective as going into clinical practice for some things. And we also give our students open access to the labs so they can come and practice stuff as they want to, because sometimes it's easier to do it without a teacher. So those are our tips and tricks. However, in our program, I would not dare speak about teaching and learning when I'm the head of a department without involving our students. So I have 2 wonderful students here, Alice and Tania, who are now going to present their experience of COVID as a student.
Okay, so we just...
Yeah, I found I could do it down here. Tania, see? Oh, here, did it. Yeah, it's fine, yeah.
Kia ora koutou, my name is Tania. Kia ora koutou means hello to all in the Indigenous language of New Zealand, which is Māori, which I am. And I just wanted to share a little bit about my perspective from my own point of view as a student during lockdown. Okay. Cool. Okay, so these are my children. I am a year 2 student and I am a mum of 8 children. And I guess having 8 of them, I was very concerned because we could see what was happening around the world. And because there's 8 of them and they're all over the show, I was really concerned about their welfare, but also me as a student going into placement. I was concerned about whether I might pass COVID on to another mum. So I was really grateful to go into lockdown and spend more time with, obviously, the ones I love. I found that one of the highlights was also saving the money from traveling to classes and traveling to placement. And it was just convenient for me. It was easy for me to be able to roll out of bed and be able to get up in the morning and make it to class on time without actually having to really get ready. Challenges as a student. So for me, I am a hands-on learner, and I also just love people. I think that's why I chose to do midwifery, is I gain so much strength and so much, and I understand the reason why I'm there is when I'm with people and engaging with them. So I missed being able to see the woman, and I also just missed being able to be in class and practice things with my hands. And also it was really difficult, as you can expect, with 8 children at home. It's really difficult to try and complete schoolwork with them all home, and they're always hungry. They're always hungry. Okay. Positives. So for me, the positives were, as a student rep, I was able to see that a lot of the students that were very shy to say anything, was easier for them to type and ask a question rather than when we're in class. As a loud student myself, I noticed I'm able to voice myself. But with the quieter ones, they were easy. It was easy for them to type something up and ask for help and questions. Also, in New Zealand, so we have students we call satellite students. So they're not actually in our classrooms, but they're online learners already. And they had often felt like they were never heard, because we obviously are the dominant group, and there's so many of us, there's quite little of them. So they felt that for once they were a part of the big group, and we utilised alternatives. So as Judith was saying, with connectedness, we yearn for that, and that's why we missed class, is because we missed that connection. So we tried to gain it through meeting up and playing games. So this one was like a Pictionary thing. There's more, yeah. So it was a Pictionary game that we did together. As you can see, our brilliant artwork. And there was quite a few of us playing it as well. And we just met up with little study groups. We found that on Facebook and things, we're quite active. We're very active online. So I think that just helped bond us together and helped us to, as Judith said again, celebrate why we were there and why we were doing this. After lockdown, we found that when we went back out into placement, because in the hospitals everything was still quite unsure. They were still very, very careful. So when we're in the hospitals, there was only allowed to be one person, one nominated visitor for the woman, which allowed us to actually be with them, to actually gain that relationship. As midwives are, we're supposed to be with women. And the word on there is whakawhanaungatanga, which means relationships. So For us, that just meant being able to help them with breastfeeding support, that the ones that didn't have their families and things there, we were able to be that for them. We were able to take baby out, give them a little bit of a break throughout the night, and just actually gain a better relationship with the woman and fill those needs. So that was my perspective, and I'm just going to move on to my other friend, Alice.
Hi, my name is Alice. I'm a third-year student. Sorry, I'm in my final year, and I'm a student representative for the third-year cohort. So I'm just here going to share some of my experience, what we did that helped us during the lockdown.
Yep.
Great. So what helped us during the lockdown was that, as Judith said, we're given time to be with family and to kind of, as a grief, because we lost our opportunity, some of the opportunity to be in placement. We lost our time to be, because during level 3, we weren't able to be with our extended family, so our grandparents. We were only able to stay with our bubbles. So, and there was a lot of changes that happened during that, as mentioned, and a lot of instability. So we're able to have time off, which I believe it helped us. And another thing is, even during the lockdown, our brilliant teachers and our lecturers, we were able to still have ongoing communications and meetings between them. We have this university website called Blackboard, as mentioned, and there was like ongoing announcement, so we don't feel left out. So it's that connectionness. We were able to have our concerns answered, and even if there was no answered, there were reassurance that they know that it was acknowledged, the concern was acknowledged. And we also, from the very beginning, we have this website, we use this social media page, Facebook. We use Facebook because it was a platform that a lot of people already know that they know how to utilize it. We have one student that didn't have it, but then she has friends around her who make sure that she was kept in the loop. So the concerns was raised on the Facebook page, and it was a private group. And this is actually our page here. And then as a student representative, all I needed to do was to collect the concerns, and then the meetings, weekly meetings we had, or even through email, I could email, for example, Judith, and tell her all our concerns, and she will tell us, like we will talk about it, and then I will update the students with Facebook page, and that really helped us. I think it's definitely that connection, and our educators were really understanding, and they really acknowledged the stress during us. As Tanya, she has 8 children, and a lot of our class are mothers, so their children were at home because of the lockdown, and it brought them a lot of stress, and they have to have time to look after them, and which is great because our educators were understanding. So they understand that, oh, maybe we're not able to complete our assignment at the time prior to lockdown, and they changed it, and it was great. And they listened to us that, oh, maybe it's still too early, and they delayed it further. And till now, like I think all of us had no concerns or stress, about the assignment. I think it was just really, it was great in terms of what happened and what they did for us. And this is for the students. It was really a time to be innovative and creative. So next time, and it's a great time to bond with just the students and the teachers were able to bond. I think it was great. And then And then, so next time I wish we could do more, or as just a student, even the student themselves or incorporate one of the teachers is to have more virtual learning classes. Like we had tutoring kits already, so it would be nice. And then like bookings and then safety precautions were like, those were actually stuff that we kind of did as well. But then I also hope that we had a student study section that each student can teach each other a clinical skill or a strength that they are confident in teaching. And then I wish next time, if we ever touch wood, we won't be, but in the lockdown, I think I will be more, yeah, we'll be trying to voice out. And yeah, overall, I think it was great. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you. Very important for us that you hear from our students, because they're the ones that really carried the burden, and will be able to really tell you how it was. We'd like to finish by playing a video, which I hope will play. If it doesn't, I'll stop it, but we'll just see how it goes. So just bear with us while we bring it down here, if I can get back. Yes, here we go.
Woman, I know you see. Woman, sing with me. Keepers of the womb, daughters of the moon, woman.
Oops.
The woman in me, carriers of life, it's our time to rise. Woman, I set you free. I know you're wise, woman. I know you're wild, woman. Oh, I know you bleed. I know you're strong, woman. I know you cry, woman. Oh, you feel everything. I cannot hide it. I will not fight it. The woman, she's been trapped. She's singing out of me. I will not hide it. Now that I've found it, sisters come together. We'll set each other free. Woman, 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 I know you see. Woman, 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 sing with me. These hips, these thighs, these lips, these eyes. I claim the beauty in me. These hips, these thighs, my lips and my eyes. Oh.
Thank you so much for listening to us. Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff written in Indonesian. Fantastic.
Support.
Would you
Trustee Hansen,
Support.
Trustee Parrott,
Support.
Trustee Reddy,
Support.
Trustee Wong,
In agreement.
Trustee Ballantyne,
In agreement.
and yes, I'm also in agreement. So unanimous support for that. And so we have an amended motion before us. And Trustee Reddy, you have another amendment?
I don't. No, Chair. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Trustee Reddy. So then we have before us an amended motion for voting that has been moved and seconded. So if there's no other speakers, we can move to the vote. And the vote is on the main motion as amended. So Trustee Cho.
In support.
Trustee Gonzalez.
Support.
Trustee Hansen.
Support.
Trustee Parrott.
Support.
Trustee Reddy.
Support.
Trustee Wong.
I support.
Trustee Champedley.
I support.
And Trustee Cho. You're first. Okay, I moved my marker. So yes, I'm in support. So we have unanimous support for the main motion as amended.
Okay, thank you to Ms. Judith Mikara Cooper and also Dr. Andrea Gilkinson for delivering the materials. It's very clear, understood well, and give high motivation to us. Yeah. Okay, to all participants, I open discussion now. Is there any one of you want to ask about the materials that we have discussed? You can chat. Okay, from Mega Sophia. Is it? Okay, there is a question from Tantri, please.
Okay, hello, Miss Judith and Miss Andrea. My name is Tanti Indriani, and I want to ask about how to maintain health tips for pregnant women during pandemic. Thank you very much.
Okay, the next question maybe you can check. Who want you ask? Okay, there is a question also from Sylvia. Okay, please. Okay, please mention.
Hello. Okay, I want to ask about how how to assessment the student skill practice via virtual. And please, can you share to me about the student research in New Zealand and how the student community service with virtual? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, June. The question from Sylvie and Tantri. Now, please, Miss Judith and Dr. Andrea, may you can answer the question. Hello? Hello, Miss Judith?
Okay. Hello. Oh, wait a minute. Miss Judith, yes, hello. Are there some questions? Oh, hello.
Yeah, hello. Okay, Miss Judith and Miss Andrea, there are some questions.
Oh,
some
great.
question. Okay,
Yes.
I read it.
Yes.
The first from Tantri. The question is how to prevent mom from moms from during giving birth in the hospital. Sorry.
Yeah.
The first question, how to maintain health tips for pregnant women during pandemic. Okay, that one, the first question. And then the second question from Sylvia, is there any obstetric clinic module virtual clinic for practical learning? How to assessment the student skill practice via online with critical thinking from the case or how? Okay, that's one. May you answer the question?
Can you just repeat the first question again? I think I missed the first question.
For the first question,
Please.
how to maintain health tips for pregnant women during pandemic. How to maintain health for pregnant women. That one from the first.
Thank you for that. I imagine that you have lots of knowledge about how to maintain health for pregnant women in Indonesia. It's in New Zealand. We are very lucky in that we had access to, women still had access to good food and to health professionals during the pandemic. I think one of the big learnings for us was to educate everyone around COVID and how to be safe around COVID. So one of the things midwives did, one of the things our government did was there was a list of questions that every midwife had to ask a woman before the midwife went into the woman's home. So she would ask the woman, does anybody in your house have a cold? Does anyone in your house unwell? Does anyone in your house feel like they have flu? And if the woman said yes, then the midwife would not go into her house. The women also used those questions to make sure that no one came in contact with them who was unwell, had a cold, had a sniffle. One of the big things we talked about was bubbles. And a bubble in New Zealand was me and my family. We stayed together and we did not see anybody else. So 2 things women can do during COVID is to stay in a bubble with people they know have not got COVID and not go outside. And if they go outside, to have 3 or 4 questions that they can ask people about their health. And if the people are not healthy, then the woman should not go near them. So in New Zealand, we had our same access to food, we had our same access to water, so none of those things were an issue. But I'm sure that many midwives in Indonesia have many stories that they could share with us about how to keep women healthy during a pandemic. Do you have anything more to add? Does that answer that question?
Yes, that's clear enough. Okay, from the second question, from Sylvia Nuzulus. Sylvia Nuzulus, is there any obstetric clinic module, virtual clinic for practical learning? That means how to give assessment the student to practical skill.
Yeah. So yeah. I think when the students are not in clinical and are not at the university or the midwifery school, it is very hard to give clinical skills. I think though, once they can be at the midwifery school and they can be in your laboratories and your practice rooms, you need to run scenarios, stories. So you need to pretend. I know people in Indonesia and many parts of Asia are very good at role plays. You need to have role plays whereby one student is the woman who comes for an antenatal visit, another student is the midwife, and they role play the antenatal visit. They have what we could call virtual clinics. So they take the woman through the assessment, the blood pressure, the urinalysis, all those things. Another way of doing it is by having OSCAs, objective clinical structured examination, OSCA, but not as a examination assessment, but as a tool for learning, and get the students teaching each other. One of the things our students do, for example, around newborn resuscitation. So when babies are not breathing and we need to resuscitate babies, our students practice. And when they think they've got the practice right, they film themselves on their camera, on their phones, a little video, and then they show it to the teacher. And am I able to resuscitate a baby properly? And so they've done all this practice, but then they do a little video of themselves and the teacher goes, yes. So it is very difficult if you cannot be at the midwifery school. I don't think there's a lot you can do with clinical skills. I think you've mainly got to focus on theory. But once you've got your practice room and your simulation room, you can do anything. You can do anything except probably give birth, but you can do a lot of things that you could do in clinical. So I'd really encourage you to do that. We would be happy to share some of our resources if people want us to share some of our resources. We find some of the videos through Japaigo, Global Health. We can give you those references, very, very good videos for clinical learning. Yeah, and I think the critical thinking, it's very interesting. I think many teachers have that concern. How do we make sure the students are doing critical thinking during simulation and practice? And so part of that is to make sure you get the students to explain to one another the reasons why they're taking the blood pressure, the reasons why they're doing the urinalysis, the reasons why they are sending the woman off for a x-ray or a scan. So I think you need to build those why questions into these scenarios or the role plays that you do. I know in Bangladesh a lot, we stop everybody, and when they're doing their role play, and we go, so tell us why you are doing this. Why are you sending this woman for an ultrasound scan at 32 weeks? Why are you doing this? So things like that can really develop critical thinking. You want to say anything about that? No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the answer. It's very clear and understood well. Okay, so enough for the question. Thank you so much, Miss Judith, and also Dr. Andrea for answer and explanation. Okay, so enough for the first session. Don't go anywhere, all participants. We still have one speaker more after this. Okay, now I give back to the host, Mugi, please. Time is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think will she do something with us? Or
Thank you very much to Mrs. Judith, Mrs. Andrea, and Mrs. Retno. Can we take some photo first? Mrs. Judith and Mrs. Andrea?
yes, we're just looking at everybody.
Yeah.
So we
Okay.
yeah.
Please, the audience can turn on the cameras.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that
Oh.
was too-
Oh, sorry. Yes. Okay, we'll go speak of you again. There we are. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I will counting.
Thank you.
One, two, three. Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Judith and Mrs. Andrea.
Bye. Okay.
Okay, now we will start the second session, and this is the last presentation. I will invite Mrs. Retno to be the moderator. So, Mrs. Retno, time is yours.
Hello everyone, come back again with me. Okay, now we enter to the second session. Our speaker on this session is from Indonesia, and we are going to discussing about how to improve midwifery patient safety on community during COVID-19 pandemic. That will be delivered by Ms. Lastri Mewinarni SSC MCUP. But before that, I will read the CV from her. Okay, Ms. Lastri Mewinarni, SST MCUP, is a lecturer in Midwifery program YATSI Midwifery and Nursing School. Her educational background as a master degree of midwifery in Pajajaran University, Diploma 4 of Midwifery and Diploma 3 of Midwifery. And then her work experience. Now, as independent practice midwifery, also as a yoga teacher for prenatal and postnatal yoga, as a vice director of academic at YATSI Midwifery and Nursing School, as a chief of midwifery program in YATSI Midwifery and Nursing School, and as assistant lecturer in YATSI Midwifery and Nursing School. Okay, now. All right. Now, dear Miss Lastri Mewinarni, we invite you, please come here.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Retno. Do you hear my voice? Hello, Assalamualaikum. The committee hear my voice?
Yes, I can hear.
Here, okay. Can you help me to share my presentation because I use my handphone?
Okay, Panitia will share the presentation.
Thank you, Miss. Okay, dear audience, I am Lastri. Thank you for attending and participating this webinar. I do really sorry if there are some trouble in connection or on something with audio visual. It's not clear when I explain my presentation. Well, today I will present the topic about how to improve patient safety in private midwife practice during COVID-19. Okay, the next slide. Next slide. Okay, we know today the global world facing the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah. Before slide 1. The worldwide condition on June 21st, 2020, the confirmed have positive 19 COVID is 9,004,561. And then the death is about 470,665. It's horrible. How about in Indonesia? Next slide. We have new cases every day until 1,000. So in the same days there are 45,891 confirmed positive 19, and the death is about 2,465. And it is a very challenging for us as a health worker, frontline liner, for midwives to give quality midwifery care for mom and babies. Next slide. This condition of midwifery care also changed, like 9% pregnant women required respiratory support in labor. So it almost help workers feel unsafe, even have PPA and infection control. Over 100 midwife deaths in Italy and UK. How about Indonesia? In Indonesia, now the counting is 55 health workers, include doctors and nurses, and 3 of midwives have died. In 100 deaths, there are 6 until 7 health workers. So, moreover, there intervention outside the midwife's authority. It's about increasing cases of cesarean section, isolation mom from their partners and newborns, not initiation breastfeeding, and lead to unnecessary intervention on childbirth. Next slide. Unfortunately, it was supported by potential midwives exposed with COVID-19. So, because the midwife Indonesia frontline health worker to provide essential health service for mom and babies, providing quality midwifery care to women and newborns, pregnancy, labor, birth, and postnatal period, and also safeguarding public health. Now, the latest data we have that 744 suspect monitoring of COVID-19 for midwives, and 48 suspect COVID-19, 218 confirmed positive COVID, and then 512 the midwifery self-isolation. Next slide, please. So the private midwifery practice, it has increasing trend from pregnant women. Nevertheless, midwife of one of the most health worker which selected by mom and community to give health care. Moreover, in Indonesia, the trend of pregnancy is increasing insanely. In each district, we have almost 100 until 1,000 pregnant women, while work from home suggested by government. And then almost of the mom feel worried and unsafe if coming to hospital. Mom must be wash their hands using face masks, measure body temperature before enter the clinic or the hospital. Because of that, the warmly welcome from midwife, priorities mother and baby care, using mother baby care make the midwife always be chosen by women to give maternity care. Okay, this is a photo from midwife Puji Rohana. She is a midwifery Indonesia in DKI Jakarta. Okay, next. So it will be important for us to discuss about how to keep patient safety in community midwife practice. We can do the appointment and procedure, new procedure for intranatal care, antenatal care, and postnatal. So we can do the restricting visitor, face masks and hand sanitizer, of course, cleaning, reorganizing, and check-in option. And the last is screening and testing. Next slide. Appointment and procedure. Private midwife practice can open hotline on phone number for the appointment with the patient. So the patient, the mom come to the clinic is always by appointment. So the midwife can prepare, the staff, the environment can prepare how to accept the mom who want to antenatal care or labor. Make new procedural in free activities for the patient with or without COVID. Next, please. So in our clinic, restricting visitor can be done by reduce the number of people. We have to prevent this risk of exposure between patients to a visitor and to the staff. Just only one guardian allowed to be with mother, even one to antenatal practice or intranatal or postnatal care. So in our culture, when mom have a labor, and then the friend, the family, the neighbor come to the clinic to see the mom and baby. So maybe it can be have done first, just restricting visitor to reduce a number of people. Okay, next please. Mask and hand sanitizer, of course, because this is the first prevention for us to make prevent spread of COVID-19. Mask for staff is used by wearing by staff, mask for patient and visitor, and we have to provide masks in the clinic. Sometimes when the patient or the visitor have some cough, some sniffle, they can the mask wet, so they can have to change it with the other new one. Provide the special rabies bin for use masks and provide hand sanitizer or better wash towel and soap for hand wash. Okay, next. Cleaning and reorganizing in check-in option. It's common area like lobbies, waiting rooms, restroom are cleaned often with special attention. With special attention, it means that before and after service hour, we have to clean it with hand soap and clean water. So we have to ask the cleaning service to be careful when they clean all of the rooms and the furnitures. Yeah, exam rooms. This is special because clean and disinfected between each patient. So if one patient, one mom have a labor, we have to clean and disinfect when mom has just gone to home. Floor marking and furniture. Floor marking with cross sign, arrangement, support for this social distancing, and reduce the number of people. So separate waiting rooms between visitor or patient who have COVID-19 symptoms from others like a cough, sniffles or flu, fever. It has to separate waiting rooms, not the together with other patients. If you have an application to make e-check-in to limit the exposure, it can be better because today the information technology is increasing, so we can make a simple check-in application to arrangement the visitor of patient. Next, please. And screening and testing, of course, all of the patient, staff, visitor who has screened all before they enter to the clinic. If we have a fever, cough, fatigue, short breath, or sore throat, check the temperature. If they have to 38 up, just they has to go home. COVID-19 testing, if any patient wants to care in labor or has the symptom, rapid or swab. It need for us to prevent the COVID-19 spread. Okay, next. So every patient must nevertheless be taken to protect midwife. So just only the patient to protect and then the midwives too. We have to access to testing for COVID-19. Although the Indonesia to test COVID-19 is a very make some regulator, it doesn't free and then it doesn't easy for us, but we have to given regular information and training on COVID. Yeah, we have to update evidence-based safety protocols and also promote the appropriate COVID-19 hygiene and prevention. Of course, access to and use of the personal protective equipment, disposal of used material, access to soap and disinfectant in good quantities. And also, we have to share the midwives how about data on COVID COVID-19 infected persons. We have to timely and factual message to use with patient and combat misinformation on COVID-19 and pregnancy. Next, please. Okay, this is a midwifery setting in COVID. It's also the same with the other slide, that we ensure the midwife has access to soap and disinfectant and clean water at all times. Ensure quality PPE, ensure access to timely coronavirus testing for midwives, and then encourage midwife to promote coronavirus testing in their patient. Support midwife to continue providing evidence-based safe care. Support them in providing equalities, compassionate, reproductive care, and support them in providing care by remote access if necessary. Ensure midwives are seen supported as a member of health workers team. Encourage strong interprofessional communication, and then back up from local health and facilities and services. Ensure midwife have safe transport to from work. Ensure midwife can access specialized obstetric and neonatal support with other hospital, other obstetrology. Ensure midwife have access to smartphone link, support provide social support to midwives, and ensure midwife keep good record of the patient seen and treated. The next, please. Okay, today every person, organization, university, researcher, even the government try to find the best way to prevent and solve the COVID-19 pandemic in every field. One of them is this photo. This photo shared by Ajo, and now this photo has been deleted. They say this is an effective protective equipment to use in vaginal delivery of pregnant women with suspected or diagnosis COVID-19. But more readers say that there are so many wrong with this because this is the humanism, anti-physiological and not effectiveness. Yes, it can be dangerous for mom when facing labor when straining. So maybe we have to choose what the care of women respected with a comfortable labor or comfortable antenatal care, comfortable or postnatal care for mom and baby. Yes, just we have to read more evidence-based and research for the newest about COVID-19. Okay, next. So the recommendation of this presentation is trials and risk screening for COVID-19, not in mom, but also the midwives, personal equipment, personal protective equipment, and the new procedural for antenatal care, intranatal care, and postpartum. For pregnant women with symptom COVID-19 need self-isolation, have medical care. So the personal health and safety is important. Okay, next, this is my reference for this presentation. Okay, I was very impressed with Dr. Natalie Kanim give some speech. She said that let's do everything in our power to protect midwives so they can continue to keep women and newborns safe. Okay, maybe this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you, Jumis Lastri, Mewinarni, for delivering the materials. Okay, now to all participants, I open discussion again. Is there any one of you want to ask about these materials? You can check. Who want to ask? Who can check?
Is any question for me?
Yeah, okay. Okay, you can mention your question. Hello? Check my chat. Oh, there is a request from Novisari. After the session, can I get this presentation material?
Yes, of course. Oh, yes,
Oh
of
yeah,
course.
of course. Yes, of course.
From the New Zealand, I will continue to connect with Miss Judith and Miss Andrea to send us the material.
Materials, okay.
Because yesterday they say that the presentation not complete.
Okay, I see. Okay, for all participants, you can chat the event organizer, yeah, panitia. You can ask the materials for today from Miss Judith, Miss Andrea, and also Miss Lastri. Okay, so there is no question. There's no question for from the participants.
Okay, thank you. If
Okay.
there's no question.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Miss Lastri.
Thank you so much, Miss Retno, and all of the team, midwifery team in Yatsi Nursing and Midwifery College.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Lasri, who has given us knowledge. It's very clear and also understood well. So from our discussion today, I can give conclusion. From the first, we can improve midwifery student achievement and develop learning tool in the middle of pandemic. For example, by several preparations such as teaching online, personal protecting, and following the procedure well. And also we can make a celebration. This is also can improve the academic performance and the others. Yeah. And we can also make some preparation to improve patient safety in the middle of pandemic, such as by following the procedure in the hospital and also in the clinic. We can also giving how to say the information about cleaning and reorganizing and check in option. Yeah, we can also make appointment to midwife or maybe to the doctor, and then prevent the risk of exposure between patients, visitor, staff, etc. And the important things, we stay safe and stay healthy. Okay, once again, we give our applause to the three speakers who have given very good materials today. Thank you, Miss Judith. Thank you, Miss Andrea. And also thank you, Miss Lastri. Thank you so much. We can meet in other times. Yeah, so the session that we run has been finished. I, as a moderator, am so sorry if in carrying out the task, there are many mistakes that are less pleasing in the heart of the attendees. Yeah. Well, I return to the host, Mugi. Thank you so much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.